Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join today's live stream, and just want to make sure my audio was working. It seemed like it wasn't working for a second. But if I have any issues, just feel free to let me know. So what I do want to mention before I get started, guys, is that I do have something new that I want to share before talking. It's not necessarily about the website. I know I mention my website every time I go on this stream. But what I want to talk about is that I've added a new feature on Facebook that I've actually been eligible for that is called, it's basically subscriptions. So this is not something that you necessarily have to do. It's not something, that you have to, invest in. But my profile has actually been eligible to be able to add subscriptions in order to for you to basically like a fan way to contribute to what I have to offer. Like all of the content that I share, this is just a way for you to contribute. The way that you can actually be a part of this is you can go onto any of my previous posts that have been posted recently, and there's a little comment that'll be linked at the bottom of each post saying that if you want to subscribe, you can go to this link, and it's like 99 cents a month. So this is not something that you have to do. It's just something that I've, felt like I should use because I do have access to it. And if it's something that you want to contribute to, that's fine. But don't see that as as a way for me to just for you to just give me money. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's just that I want to share, I have all of these different resources. If there's a way you want to contribute, like for example, you may not be somebody who, is really interested in, being a part of online coaching, or you're not interested in, really getting a coach, but if you want to have a different way to contribute to me, this is a way for you to be able to do that. I will share more information about the subscription thing as I get adjusted to it, because this is a new feature that I've recently added to my profile on Facebook. But you'll see a comment on my newer posts that will ask you, if you want to support my profile or my content, you can subscribe here. So again, that's not something that you are obligated to do, but if you really, want to support me, that's completely fine. But I have it there as a way for anybody who's just not interested in maybe joining online coaching, who's just doesn't want to, I guess commit to something like that, that this is a different way for you to support me if you want to support me. So I wanted to share that in advance. Again, I'll share more information, as this I get adjusted to it. But it's like 99 cents a month if that's something that you want to do. Again, there's no obligation to that. It's just something that I wanted to share. Because my main focus here is really just sharing value. I don't want to come across as somebody who's just trying to get money from you. That's not my focus. I really enjoy what I do. Yes, I do have a business. I have a business, of helping, individuals in online coaching. But one of the primary things related to my business is helping people. And that, comes with sharing content, related to fitness and things of that nature, and, giving, my clients workout plans and things of that nature. But my main focus, is really giving you guys more quality content, giving you guys more information that you can use. Um, so I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but let's sort of go back into talking about what we're talking about today. But I just wanted to mention that I do have that Facebook has given me that sort of, opportunity to use the subscription based model if I want to. But again, this is not something that you're obligated to support. It's just there if you want to. So let's go ahead and talk about today's topic, which is the truth about sugar. How much is too much? So this is a topic that I've wanted to discuss, and it's something that I've not really went into detail about. And so I felt like, well, this would be something a little bit unique, something that's something that I haven't really discussed in detail. I've touched a little bit on, various nutrition topics. Like last week, I touched on carbs, but this time I want to sort of dissect sugar and sort of understanding the difference between various different types of sugar, and really going into detail to how to understand how much is too much and what impact sugar does have on your body. So, these are the topics that I'm going to be discussing today. We're going to talk about sugar's impact on your body, the hidden sugar trap, natural versus added sugars, breaking the sugar addiction, the truth about artificial sweeteners, and of course, how much sugar is too much. So, I'm going to expand upon all of these different points here, but let's go ahead and get started with talking about what is the biggest impact that sugar has on your body. So, as far as sugar, it happens with there's many ways that sugar actually contributes to basically how your body reacts to it. And a lot of this can have to do with basically the types of sugars you're consuming. So, sugar enters the body or through the bloodstream quickly, especially in refined sugars. Blood sugar spikes, leading to a rapid energy boost. The brain releases dopamine, triggering a temporary feel good effect similar to addictive substances. The pancreas releases insulin to move sugar from blood to cells. Excess sugar is stored as glycogen. And I talked a little bit about glycogen last week in the live stream over carbs. If you want to learn a little bit more about glycogen itself, you can watch that one. There's a lot of good information there in that live stream that discusses exactly what glycogen does and how it is, related to carbs as well. So, excess sugar, again, going back to the topic at hand, excess sugar is stored as glycogen in muscles and the liver. If intake is too high, excess sugar gets converted into fat. So, there's a lot of things to keep in mind when it comes to sugar. And one thing I think that's, one of the very interesting points that a lot of people aren't aware of when we're talking about sugar is this last point here is that again, it's more about the excess intake of sugar. It's not to say that sugar is completely bad. It's basically how much you consume of sugar. That's really what is going to be the make or break, depending on if you're going to gain fat or, really affect any, sort of health problems, in other words. So, the other point I want to go over here is the hidden sugar trap. So, basically, what is this is talking about how sugar can sneak into your diet. And I'm going to explain exactly what this can mean. So, sugar is really it's such a very diverse sort of, ingredient, and that you'll see sugar on so many different things that you wouldn't expect sugar to be in. For example, and I know this doesn't relate to everybody because not everybody eats cornbread, but cornbread is a southern thing. So I wanted to mention this because not too long ago I had cornbread and I didn't realize how much sugar is sort of in cornbread. So, and this relates to the topic at hand. So, when it comes to various different foods, it's very important to sort of really identify what's in them, of course, by looking at nutrition facts and looking at ingredients labels. And I'm going to discuss different types of names that sugars are under. So there's times where you'll see on food labels where sugars aren't necessarily identified as sugars, but it's a different type of name, but it's still under the umbrella of being a sugar. I know it can kind of be confusing, but that's kind of how the landscape is of the foods that we eat and things of that nature. So, added sugars are disguised under different names in packaged foods. I'll talk about that here further, and you may have heard these terms when I talk about them, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and just, sort of talk about what we're talking about at hand. So, sugar again can be found at unexpected places like breads, sauces, and yogurts. I just mentioned cornbread. And going back to that topic of cornbread, again, I know not everybody eats cornbread, it's a southern thing, but with cornbread, a lot of times they add a lot of extra sugar Usually cornbread has way more sugar than it needs to be. It's just a side of bread, but it's like loaded with sugar, and I didn't realize how much it had. But of course, that's a big problem with us who live in the South, that we, of course, consume a lot of comfort food. And so a lot of the foods that we have, of course, do have an excess amount of sugar in them. So what I'm trying to say here is that what you should really think about is the foods that you consume really take some time to kind of look at the ingredients of what you eat. This is something that I do, depending on what I'm eating, depending on what types of foods I'm looking at, if I'm shopping or anything of that sort. And you'll be surprised at what you find in different types of foods. So, like for example, there was something that I noticed here recently, and this isn't necessarily related to sugar, but it still kind of has the same impact where it's really important to understand the ingredients of what you're consuming. So I recently got a pre-workout supplement not too long ago, and I didn't realize that it had a lot of different dyes in it. And so I was like surprised. I'm like, why does this need? I mean, it's just a supplement. Why does it need extra dyes in it for the color? And you'll be surprised if you sit down and look at the ingredients in specific types of foods, whether that be, of course, supplements or any types of food. You'll be surprised at what you find, and it makes you more, aware of what you're consuming. And going back, of course, to the topic of sugar, this is something that's often overlooked due to misleading marketing labels. A lot of labels, mislead you into what you're consuming. So the best thing you need to focus on is the ingredients list. Now, when we're talking about, nutrition facts versus ingredients list, those are two separate things. So, for example, when you're looking at a nutrition facts label, that's going to tell you information related to, like calorie count, carbs, fats, any proteins that are in there, any specific vitamins that are in that particular food. The ingredients label is telling you what that food is comprised of, what's basically inside of that particular food, what all has been added to that food. Really, the best way to identify whether something that is, more organic or more or a healthier option is the smaller the ingredients list is. If you have, something that you see something at, the grocery store and you see it has a huge ingredients list and the list is like, like 2 paragraphs long, that's loaded with processed stuff, in other words. Like if you see anything that's like a dye, it'll usually say red number something or blue number something. Usually those are dyes. But I know we're getting off the topic of sugars, but it's very important to sort of identify the ingredients that are in a, specific food. And this is probably something I'll expand upon in a different live stream to talk about the ingredients list versus talking about nutrition facts. Because I know that that can be kind of confusing, sort of understanding the difference between the two. So, again, like I mentioned, a lot of processed and packaged foods are going to have that big ingredients list, and their sugars are going to be under different names. They're not going to be labeled as sugar per se. So, some of the packaged foods you'll notice this with is flavored yogurt, granola bars, salad dressings, ketchup, and condiments. Ketchup in particular, you would be surprised at how much sugar is in ketchup. And it's something that I didn't realize until not too long ago that I didn't realize how much sugar was in ketchup, but it does have a ton of sugar. If you actually look at, any ingredients list or any, especially nutrition facts, how much sugar is in ketchup. Condiments, anything like that is going to have, a good amount of sugar in it. Dressing, of course, like I just mentioned. Healthy drinks like smoothies and sports drinks can have loaded sugars in them, even though they are, considered, more healthy. It's important to really identify what's in those. Especially, when we're talking about Gatorade, that's something that it can be good in certain cases. So Gatorade does have quite a bit of sugar in it. Anything like a sports drink like Powerade, Gatorade, a lot of times you'll notice that those have a lot of sugars in them. But one thing that people are not aware is that when you consume basically Gatorade, it's more about, hold on, let me see if I can fix my screen here because I just noticed that it's offset. So one thing you'll notice about Gatorade is that, sorry, I just wanted to fix my screen because I seen it was offset on my other screen. So I just wanted to fix it here. So with Gatorade, of course, is that you're going to notice there's a lot of sugars in those specific types of, drinks. But the way that you consume Gatorade is a little bit different in that you don't basically, it's not something that you drink to just drink it. It's more so used for the aspect of, getting electrolytes in your system, getting enough of those electrolytes. So, for example, when you consume Gatorade, you mainly need to focus on whether you're consuming it based on the like your activity level, in other words. So I think I've got it fixed now. I apologize, guys. I was trying to fix that screen and I just noticed it up there. So going back to the topic of Gatorade, you'll see a lot of sugars in Gatorade, but with Gatorade, it's more about how you consume it because it does give you some electrolytes in your system that it can be good for longer training sessions. So, for example, if you consume Gatorade you know, like if you're doing a training session over an hour, it's going to be beneficial to consume Gatorade with the electrolytes in it. And it's giving you a little bit more energy. So that's why there's more sugar in that. You don't need to consume Gatorade just casually, in other words. You need to consume it based on your activity level. And that's what I'm trying to get across there. So it's basically how you consume those specific, healthier types of drinks like Gatorade and smoothies. It's more of, when you consume them and how you consume them. And that's what I wanted to get across there. So, another thing that I do want to discuss here is natural versus added sugars. So, when it comes to natural versus added sugars, there's a few different things to keep in mind. So, sugar, of course, is one of the most debated ingredients in nutrition today. And while we all know that excess sugar can lead to health problems, many people turn to natural sweeteners as a seemingly healthy or alternative. But are they truly better? So let's break down the differences between sugar and natural sweeteners to sort of help you stay informed of the choices you are making. So, sugar or sucrose, sucrose is one of those names that you'll see pop up. It's basically what you'll see on an ingredients label. Is a simple carbohydrate. This kind of connects with what I talked about last week because we talked about simple carbohydrates and how simple carbohydrates are, into your system faster, but then you get a crash because you're getting a high amount of energy all at once and it's not lasting because the body digests it fast. Again, you can watch that other live stream. I did explain more on that topic as well, but it sort of connects. Carbs and sugars kind of have somewhat of a connection here. So, a simple carbohydrate that provides quick source of energy when consumed. It is broken down into glucose and fructose. Fructose is another label for sugar as well, which the body uses for fuel. However, excess sugar intake can lead to blood sugar spikes and crashes, increased risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, weight gain, and fat storage, inflammation, which contributes to heart disease. So, this is about having excess sugar in your system. So don't see, again, sugar as completely a bad thing. It's okay here and there to consume, things that have sugar in them. It's just being knowledgeable about how much you're consuming is what's most important. We all cannot stay fully strict to a diet. Sometimes we do kind of get off a diet, and that's fine. What matters is that we get back onto our normal routine. But like, like for example, if you have a day where, like a cheat day or something to that effect, and you get off your diet, what matters is that you don't stay like that you don't consume that type of food all the time. It's okay to reward yourself every now and then, but it's not a consistent daily thing. And that's what you have to be aware of, is that bad things happen, when it comes to consuming a lot of sugar when, you consume too much of it. Like when we're talking about blood sugar spikes, insulin and, weight gain, fat storage, all of that is because you're consuming excess sugar. And the way to avoid that, of course, is to not consume that excess sugar. So, natural sweeteners. So, I just talked a little bit about added sugars, and a lot of times on labels, you're going to see the ingredients list as being, sucrose, anything of that nature. You're going to see that sort of label as sugar, even though it's not identified on the label as sugar. I know it's confusing, but that's the way, of course, that they label packaged foods and how they label ingredients. So, natural sweeteners, again, we're going from added sugars to natural sweeteners. Natural sweeteners are derived from plant or fruit sources. They're often marketed as healthier choices. So, these are some popular options and some of their benefits. Honey. Honey is a natural sweetener with antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. While it has a similar calorie content to sugar, its additional nutrients make it a slightly better option. One thing I want to mention about honey. So, my dad drinks coffee pretty often, and one thing that he actually uses, he's like really against, he's really all about organic stuff, in other words, which is completely fine. It's great to be like that, but he's kind of picky with as far as what sugar he puts in his coffee. So what he usually uses is honey, and honey can be used as a supplement for sugar. He always adds, honey to his coffee. He'll do creamer and honey. I know that sounds like an odd combination, but it's something that you can try. If you want to try an alternative that's not just sugar, honey is a great option. It's going to have vitamins and minerals in it, as well as, sweetening the coffee. So, think about that next time. It's a good supplement. My dad's been using that for a while, and there's not a lot of people I know that use honey as, a sweetener for coffee. But it works. I've drank it. It tastes fine. It does have a different taste when you add honey to it, but it's got more benefits than just putting sugar in coffee. Stevia is another option. You've likely heard of stevia before. It's extracted from the Stevia rabudina plant. Stevia is a calorie free and does not spike blood sugar levels. It makes it an excellent choice for diabetics. Again, this is just an alternative. This is different. Stevia is different from when we're talking about like artificial sweeteners. It's not like like when you think of Splenda, that's not what stevia is. That's completely different. It's based off of a plant and it's a natural sweetener. So I know because a lot of times you'll see stevia and you'll kind of associate it with like something like Splenda, but it's completely different. It's more of a natural sugar than, of course, an artificial sweetener. So, maple syrup is another option. This contains antioxidants and essential minerals like zinc and manganese, but still carries a high sugar content. Of course, syrup is often used, with foods like pancakes and things of that nature. So, this is not something that is very good to consume very often because of how much sugar it has in it. So, keep that in mind, even though it is a natural sweetener. Coconut sugar is derived from coconut palm sap. It has a low glycemic index than white sugar, but should still be consumed in moderation. So, again, even with these natural sweeteners, it's okay to, consume these every now and then, but these kind of play the same role in a normal sugar where you need to kind of have a moderation with what you consume in these. Like what I mentioned with my dad and how he uses honey with coffee, that's usually what he mixes with honey. You know, as far as a food that or a drink that he would mix with that, that's the only drink. So, you know, it's not like he's consuming a bunch of stuff with, you know, adding honey to everything. So that's what I'm trying to get across. Is moderation depending on what you consume. It's okay to add these natural sweeteners in there. They are healthier options versus just using sugar because they add a little bit more of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, you know, instead of just relying solely on using sugar, which doesn't have much of a, you know, healthy impact. So just keep that in mind. These are options as well, but again, you know, you still want to focus on moderation with these as well. So, breaking the sugar addiction. So, I know that sugar is a very difficult thing to sort of get rid of and sort of, especially if it's something that you've consumed a lot. And again, you know, I can relate to a lot of these situations because, like I said, you know, where I live, you know, we have a lot of really unhealthy foods. It's just the nature of the beast here. But one thing that I can also relate to when it comes to, especially this topic of why sugar is addictive. So I'm not going to name names of anybody, but I did have a friend growing up, or I do, of course, have a friend that really liked to drink a lot of soft drinks, like anything, you know, related to Coke, anything of that sort. And it was really hard for them to actually get off of drinking those specific types of drinks. It never really was like that for me. Like, I did drink a little bit of Cokes and stuff like that growing up, you know, as a kid, but it was just, it wasn't something that I sort of became addicted to. And so they actually were really, it became really hard for them to get off of, you know, drinking soft drinks because, you know, they were so used to it being in the house. They were so used to, you know, just drinking that stuff so often that it became hard. And it was almost like addiction trying to get off of drinking those types of drinks. So, what I want to talk about here is that sugar is not just about, you know, an ingredient on a food label. It's a little bit more than that, especially in modern times where, you know, you have a lot of processed stuff and a lot of it has a lot of added sugar, a lot of just unhealthy things in it. And with this stuff, it makes it to be an addiction because a lot of people like to, you know, when they consume this stuff, they like the taste of it. They're they just get adjusted to it and it just becomes a natural thing. So, sugar does a lot of different things. So, sugar triggers dopamine release that's similar to addictive substances. And, you know, a lot of people are not aware of this, that it can be, you can get hooked on, you know, just the taste of specific types of drinks, the taste of specific types of foods. And it becomes this, you know, addictive sort of thing, like with anything else that's, you know, has an addictive nature like drugs. So it leads to a cycle of cravings, energy crashes, and overconsumption. So again, even though you may be looking for foods that, you know, may be healthy, they could have added sugars in there. So again, it's very important to, you know, sort of find those hidden sugars that may be in processed foods and really try to avoid those as much as possible. So Wayne does have a comment here. He says, I've always tried to minimize sugar, but do wonder if you can go too far. Is there a recommended daily amount of sugar? So there's, I wouldn't say, this is a good question, but I wouldn't say that sugar, there's a recommended daily amount because sugar is not something that, it's a little bit different than what we're talking about, you know, like a macronutrient, like when we're talking about the protein, you know, like proteins, carbs, and fats, or like vitamins, minerals, it's a little bit different. And that it, depending on, of course, the types of sugars you consume, you're not going to get much of a benefit from it, in other words. So I can't really say that there's a recommended daily intake, But what I can say is what you should focus on, if you're wanting to find something to supplement sugar and again, have sugar in your diet, but something that's not going to really, affect your diet too much. I would say, of course, go with the natural sweeteners. As far as, again, like with the recommended daily intake, there's really not one for sugar. It's really as low as you can get, is the way that I would say it when it comes to sugar, would be the recommended daily intake. But it's more about the options you choose, I think, when it comes to sugar. And again, moderation. Even like when we're talking about, if you eat cake one day or if you eat, sweets here and there, that's fine. That's not gonna really knock you off your diet completely. It's that if you continue to, you know, include a lot of that type of sugar in your diet is when you're going to have an issue. So I would just say limit sugar as much as possible. That's what I would say. But again, when we're talking about recommended daily intake, again, that's what you should focus on is getting it as low as possible. But if you get off your diet here and there, that's totally fine. Don't see it as, you messed up. But that's what I would say. I hope that it helped, Wayne. But I know sugar is just really unique in that it's not the same as like when we're talking about protein or we're talking about carbs and fats. It's its own beast entirely, where it only has its benefits health wise if it's, like honey or if it's like stevia. If it's like those types of natural sweeteners, you're going to get some health benefits. Whereas if just sugar itself, it really doesn't have much of a, healthy benefit to it. So I hope that helped. So when it comes to, the signs of a sugar addiction, again, continuing on with this sort of topic here, you're going to notice this again. This is like with anything. And again, I'm not somebody who's going to, diagnose you with anything. Of course, keep that in mind. If you do have a really serious, sort of, addiction to sugar, that's something that you do need to talk to somebody about. What I'm trying to get across here is just give you information on how to identify these things. So, the signs of a sugar addiction include frequent cravings for sweets or processed food, energy crashes after high sugar meals, difficulty reducing sugar intake despite wanting to, emotional eating linked to sugar consumption. So that's how you're going to sort of identify if you are sort of leaning into being addicted to this, to sugar itself. So just identify these points, when it comes to sugar. So, what are the major impacts? We talked a little bit about many things when it comes to, sugar, different types of sugar, added sugars, natural sweeteners, things of that nature. But what are I'm going ahead of myself here. What are the, many risks that come with sugar? So, when you consume too much sugar, again, you're going to notice if you consume too much when these sort of risks start to come up. So, increased risk of obesity and diabetes and heart disease are one of the major factors that come with, really the big impact of sugar. It can contribute to inflammation, acne, and poor gut health. It can also disrupt energy levels and mental clarity. So, again, like when we're talking about the topic of sugar, it's about moderation when it comes to this, specific thing as it relates to nutrition. So when you start to see changes in, like if how you're feeling, if you, like for example, and this is somewhat related here, but like with me, if I get so far away from consuming like sugar-based stuff and I consume it again, it doesn't taste as good as what I thought it was before. So like what I'm trying to get across is with like soft drinks, like I said, like I mentioned before, like when I was younger, I used to drink soft drinks, every now and then. It's not something that I consume that much, but I consumed it. But what as I've gotten older, I've completely got rid of that. Like I can't tell you the last time I've drank anything like, a soda or anything of that sort because I don't, it's just not something that feels good to drink. Especially now, like if I was to like consume, a soda or Coke, anything of that sort now, it just doesn't feel right drinking it. I hate the way it makes me feel when I drink it because of just I don't know if it's the carbonation, I don't know what it is, the amount of sugar that's in it. But one thing you'll notice if you start to really be mindful of what you eat when it comes to sugar and that you have good willpower and that you avoid it, you'll notice that if you try to, drink like Coke again, if you haven't drank in a while or anything of that sort, that it just won't taste as good. And then you won't like how it feels. So that's one good benefit that if you try to stay away for sugar for, a certain amount of time, that when you go back to consume it, it won't be something that you'll want to consume as much, if that makes sense. Because like I said, that's how I feel when I drink soda. I don't like drinking it because I don't like how it makes me feel. I kind of have a bloated feeling when I drink soda. So that's sort of one of the things that you'll notice if you avoid, sugar-based stuff for a long period of time and then you try to eat it again, it doesn't taste the same. And you kind of feel bad for eating it. It does take a while to sort of get to that stage where you're like, you can completely avoid it and it doesn't bother you, but it takes time for certain people. But just know that there's many risks that comes with sugar and that it's important to, really be aware of those risks and really, identify when it's too much. And you're going to know when it's too much. And if you start to really, feel any health effects or, gaining weight, you're going to notice when you're consuming too much of sugar. So, I know that this was a pretty long-winded topic and there was a lot of stuff that I sort of covered. And I really hope that you guys found this valuable. I know that, there's a lot of things to sort of think about when it comes to this topic, and it can be kind of difficult to really, know when to stop when it comes to sugar because for certain people it can be like an addiction. So just be aware that when we're talking about the aspect of sugar, that like with anything that is processed or anything that's unhealthy, it's more about your moderation. So, again, don't feel like you have to, avoid consuming certain types of foods because it has sugar in it. As long as you know when to stop and as long as you have, a disciplined mindset and that you know, when you get off of that diet and you jump back into your normal routine, that's what matters. That's the way that I see it. Because I know a lot of times with my clients, there's certain times where they worry about, if they get off, their diet with like one meal or this and that. That's not going to affect you. It's completely fine. I do it myself sometimes where, I'm a trainer and, I try to, hold myself accountable for what I do, but I do go off, my diet as well. It's natural. It's normal. We're going to do that. We can't, all of the time be 100% at what we're doing. It's just us as humans, we just can't do that all the time. So just know that when you do get off your diet or anything like that, if you have a cheat day or anything like that, focus on moderation. Focus on, how much you're consuming of that and just stop, And again, I know it's not the same for everybody, when it comes to sugar. I know it's a little bit difficult for different people depending on, how much sugar you've consumed or, the type of discipline and willpower you have. But it can be possible to avoid it. You just have to really, sort of understand the signs when you're consuming too much and know when to stop. So, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this live stream. I hope that you found it helpful and valuable. Again, I know this was a little bit longer than before, but I wanted to really go into detail on the topic of sugar. So, what I want to mention in the upcoming live stream that I'll have next week is that I'm going to be discussing about gut health. This is something that I've not really discussed, and it's something that I feel like you guys will find helpful, much like these previous live streams. So, again, I'll have that event posted as I usually do by the end of the week. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, or of course, you can feel free to send me a message as well. You can check out my website for all information related to online fitness coaching, which is bponlinefitness.com. Thank you guys once again, and I will see you guys next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time in the next live stream. So, thank you guys.